Hi, welcome or welcome back. Today we're going to talk all about horror, and it's the Stephen King edition. So we're going to start with Holly. Holly is one of the more recent books that he has written. In this, we're in the Midwest. Holly is a detective. She is in some of his other books, but this is her first standalone book. So there's a disappearance in this town, and Holly finds it quite intriguing, and she just has that desire to investigate and solve crimes, and that's exactly what she starts doing. And as she starts investigating this disappearance, she starts to uncover a lot of other disappearances or murders, just really strange, unusual occurrences in this town. We get to follow Holly as she's starting to uncover all of the details about some of these crimes, the people that she's meeting along the way. We get to see the town from her perspective. And then we also get to take a journey with the individuals responsible for the disappearance and murders. And we get to see their justification for what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing. And let me tell you, it's a little graphic and disturbing and kind of made my stomach turn a little bit, but it wasn't enough to make me stop reading. Like, I still wanted to keep reading it. This book was very fast paced. It was excellent. It was so well done, and I was still so intrigued by the storyline of the kidnappers and like the kidnappers, murderers, and also who they were. When you find out who they are in the community, and I can't exactly remember if you find that out in the beginning or in the middle, so I'm just not going to say who they were, but it's fascinating, and it adds another layer to the puzzle of, wow, these are very, like, these are highly intelligent, well-respected individuals in the community, and they're out of their minds. And I just found that really fun, and I really find Holly to be such a charming and endearing character. I love her tenacity. I love how unique this book was. And I expect nothing less, honestly, from a Stephen King book. So it delivers in every kind of way. This book is Fairy Tale. And before I even get into this, I loved this book so much. This is actually what sparked my interest in going down a Stephen King rabbit hole, and I spent a little while just reading a lot of his older books that I hadn't given the time of day to. I didn't even think about them really. But Fairy Tale, it's a really wonderful blend of anxiety and nostalgia, because he integrates some really pivotal fairy tales that I heard when I was a child into this story, but in a dark and sinister way. And that kind of take and twist on some of these, past comforting stories that we'd be told. Some of them are comforting. Some of them are still, like, when you think about them, when you reflect on them now as an adult, you're like, okay. But, overall, most of them were fun. So anyway, in this, we are following Charlie, who is a 17-year-old. And Charlie becomes friends with a really reclusive neighbor, Mr. Bowditch. So nobody in the community really associates with Mr. Bowditch. He does his own thing, everybody else does theirs. So Charlie befriends him, and we get to see the relationship develop a little bit, and it is actually really sweet, and I kind of love that when you are getting to know someone that society has kind of written off. Anyway, Mr. Bowditch dies, and he leaves everything, his house, his dog, his yard, like everything, to Charlie. So Charlie, of course, goes exploring. And in the back of Mr. Bowditch's house, there is a shed. And in that shed, there is this really long spiral staircase. And that the way that the spiral staircase is described, like, it still sticks with me. I had a spiral staircase in my childhood home. So it's like nostalgic, but it's also like you can just, the visual that it gives you, you just know exactly what you're doing, and you can feel as you're going further and further down into this well and this spiral staircase, you can feel the chill and the cold and the change in the world, because this is a portal to another world. And once Charlie gets into this new world, he discovers that it's been taken over and is ultimately being destroyed by this really dark curse or dark way of ruling. And it was once like this beautiful fairy tale kingdom. So he takes it upon himself to try to restore the kingdom to what it once was. And as we go through that journey with him, we meet so many interesting characters. Some of them are really nice, some of them are really spooky. There's this little leprechaun that follows them around all the time, and he is not so nice. He's trying to hinder every bit of progress that they make. And when I say that, I mean Charlie and the dog Radar. It's like you're kind of on the edge of your seat as you're going through this world, because you don't know what's around the next corner. You don't know if Charlie and Radar are going to make it out. And what I love also is that it's not just, they don't just go down once. So that it's that anxiety too. It's like, oh, there's finally some relief. And then it's like, oh my God, wait, what? We're going back into this world. So then you can feel that stress or that tension, or at least I could feel that stress and tension as I was reading the book. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to go back down into this world, but we have to, because I need to know what happens. It's just, you feel like you're right there with them. Anyway, it was such a well done book. I loved it. I loved the relationship Charlie had with Radar. I always love when there's a dog in a book and when the dog isn't abused or something like that, because I can't handle that. But yeah, it's a really, really good book. And it's probably my favorite, actually. My favorite book that I've ever read by him. So it's definitely worth a look if you're interested in that kind of spooky story. Needful Things. Now, this was I had a bit of a difficult time. I have a difficult time getting into some of his books. I struggle to orient myself in his world and orient with the characters and really like understand what's happening, or like the sinister motives that are going on, because they're not always obvious, and you just have to think a little bit about them. And I always question, like, well, is that what's actually happening here? And maybe that's the point. You're never really supposed to know. Anyway, Needful Things. We're in Castle Rock. Leland Gaunt just visits the community and he opens up a shop. And this shop is supposed to, well, what this shop does is anybody that comes in, Leland Gaunt is able to determine or decipher exactly what they desire, whether he compels it out of them or whether they share it or whether he just knows. So the people in the town, they end up going to the shop and they get everything that they could ever possibly want, but it comes at a price. And that price is having to do something untoward to a neighbor, or pull a prank, or honestly do worse things than that. Like, the story really, we start to really descend into chaos as we go through this, and as more townspeople continue to need to go back to needful things. And I love the theme of how desire can corrupt you, and how you always want more and more and more, and you'll stop at nothing to get that. Or some people will stop at nothing to get what they need, even if it's going to end up hurting them in the future, or going to hurt their family, or going to destroy the town. Anyway, watching that dynamic, and also watching the detective, who is obviously figuring out, like, there's something not right here, and he starts to look into Leland Gaunt. So we get to watch that storyline unfold while simultaneously watching all of the different and terrible and bizarre things that the community is doing to one another. And yeah, that descent into chaos is it's exciting. It's exciting. It was fun. It was a fun read. Okay, so this next book is one that when I read it, it was that kind of book that made me question the darkness in Stephen King's mind, and just his ability to write about some of the things that he wrote about in this. Like, some of it was really beyond disturbing, and I would never be able to write those things. So it just made me think about that. And it's like, how were you able to sit down and actually write this out, or think it through, number one, in a coherent way, that you could write this as part of a story on a page? Anyway, so just take that information as you will and proceed with caution. So I'm talking about Mr. Mercedes. So this starts out, somebody has stolen a Mercedes-Benz and they drive it into a job fair where there are a bunch of people outside who are seeking jobs. So they're all congregated in this one area. Well, a lot of people are murdered or they're injured from this person driving the Mercedes into this crowd of people. The detective in this, Detective Hodges, isn't able to solve this crime. And we can see it kind of continuing to affect him months and months after, to the point where he's being taunted by the person who drove the Mercedes into the crowd. He sent a letter by that person kind of mocking him and making fun of him for not being able to solve it, and also telling him, you know, this is something else I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do next. And many more people are going to die as a result. So you better find me, kind of thing. So the story progresses in a way that we're following Hodges from his perspective, and we're also following the murderer. I don't remember if you know how quickly we learn his name, so I'm not going to say. We are following both of their stories, and we learn that the upbringing that this guy had was absolutely atrocious. The trauma that he has endured in his life is horrific, to say the least. And what I like about this is, like, again, you start to have empathy for him. Obviously, what he has done is egregious, but you see from his history, he didn't stand a chance. All that to say, we continue on following both of these people's perspectives and storylines, and then how they intersect, how we come to a conclusion at the end. And while it was disturbing, it was an interesting book. The last book I'm going to talk about, again, another book I struggled to orient myself in the world, to figure out what was happening. And I think sometimes maybe I think too much, or I overanalyze, because it's kind of like right there in your face what's happening. And that was the way this book kind of was. It's like right there. You know exactly what's happening, so don't overthink it. Anyway, so this one is Duma Key, and we're following Edgar, and Edgar went through a terrible accident that left him physically impaired and really emotionally traumatized. So he moves to Duma Key, which is an island off the coast of Florida. And while he's staying there, he's living in this house, and he starts painting. And the pieces that he's painting, it's almost like he's compelled to create them. It's like he doesn't have a choice. It's like the universe is using him as a vessel to create these images, and he doesn't even really understand where they're coming from or why he's painting them. And this leads him down a journey to figure out more about Duma Key and more about maybe some of the history, and through that kind of seeing what the paintings are revealing to him. And also he meets people along the way who kind of help him fill in some of the blanks about the history of Duma Key and the mysteries of the ocean. And we're taken on that journey through some of the really violent and dark history, and it's explored in a really interesting and unique way. And that's what I liked about it. And as I was going back through to try to gather my thoughts about this book, I realized that I probably need to reread it, because initially I didn't like this book that much, but as I reflect on it, it's really interesting, and it's a very unique concept. So I'm going to go back and reread it. Of course, there are other books that I could have talked about, but they didn't really fall into the kind of like the horror that Stephen King is so known for. But I really enjoyed thinking back on all of these books. It was really fun to go back through the memories and how I felt while I was reading them. Like, I'm transported back to how I felt. Anyway, these were some of the really great books that I have read by Stephen King. And if you are a fan of him or a fan of the horror genre, I think that it might be worth giving one of these a try. Anyway, thank you so much for watching.